And we are back. Thank you so much for being here on this lovely Friday, the Dave Campo edition of the Doin Alright podcast. Former Cowboy head coach Dave Campo, legend, Cowboy legend in general. You know what I mean? So it's a pleasure to have you here. I pride myself on having some good questions for everybody that comes and talks to us, okay? I got some good stuff for you today.
Well, I've heard that about you, to be honest with you. I had to do some studying to get ready for this.
I lost some sleep getting ready for this show right here today, Coach. Let me just kick it off like this. This is very topical in Cowboy land right now. Brand new coach, DC, and there's going to be change. Changes are afoot, okay? I'm just going to ask you, what happens when a new coach comes into a new situation? There are players there, you know, and the Joneses have an idea of what these players need to be or what they want them to be. You say, well, my vision may not align with yours on these players, but maybe we align on these players more. How do you guys come together and figure that out? Because there's a lot of Cowboy players that are on the roster right now, and, you know, Bryan and I are trying to figure out how they fit with this new coach. But they're not going anywhere because they're Jones guys, right? How do you balance that?
Well, first of all, when a new coach comes in, it's not easy. You know, at a position situation, because if they're a 3-4 base defensively and they've been a 4-3 base defensively, you know, you recruit a draft to the scheme that you have. So that's why a lot of change in the assistant coaches is not that good, because obviously you either have to adapt to the system they had or you have to draft to the system, and that takes a little time. So the biggest thing is this. There's not a lot of, Bryan and I were talking earlier off the show, that you don't, of a 3-4 defense and a 4-3 defense, you can get into the same formations out of either one of them. It's just different style players. In a 4-3, you got two big defensive ends. In a 3-4, you got two outside linebackers that can both drop. So you have to fit what you feel along with the players you have at first, and then you ease into what your feelings are based on what you draft.
Dave, when you're in a situation where you're kind of new to it, and the players, as Voch was saying, are there, how much of the study is it? Do you have a predetermination going in about, like, okay, I think I know what these players are, but then you get there and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, we're going to have to do something completely different here?
Well, I've got a perfect example of that. When we, you know, originally with the 4-3 that we had back in the day, we had really small, fast linebackers. That Wynn, Coakley,
right?
You know, Darren Smith.
Yeah.
You know, we had guys, and it was a fast flow, speed type of a defense. Well, when we lost the middle linebacker, we had to make a decision. And we got a linebacker from Green Bay. And I apologize, but his name escapes me right now. But he was a 3-4 middle linebacker is what he was. Okay, so he wasn't a sideline-to-sideline player. Mm-hmm. So what we had to do was we had to adjust the defense to where we were an under front, where the weak side linebacker was covered, but the strong side linebacker, which was this guy, mm-hmm. was just play the guard. Whip the guard up in front of him, nobody in front of him. So with that in mind, you have to look at the people you have and you say, oh, well, I thought this guy might be able to do this, but I've got to adjust. And that's where the 4-3 and the 3-4 are compatible. They just have different players in certain spots.
How do you go about, if you're a DC, how do you go about coaching your coaches to make sure that they're on the same page with you? This is something, once again, Cowboy land. They got a bunch of young coaches. They pull college guys out now. So, okay, this National Football League is different than what you're used to doing. I have to coach you guys now. Like, what goes into that?
Well, first of all, the first thing you do, what they're doing right now is, you know, they're preparing for the draft and the combine and all that kind of stuff. But they're also taking half the day looking at the cut-ups from a year ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And so any new coach that comes in, obviously he's going to be there now. So they start looking at the cut-ups, and you coach them based off of those cut-ups. Okay, you know, and the guy that's there now that just came in, the defensive coordinator, he's going to have his cut-ups from where he's been. and you say, okay, here's what I want my left tackle to be able to do. And there it is. I'm showing it to you. And from a technique standpoint, you listen to people. That's one of the biggest things about a leader, in my opinion, is if I get a new D-line coach in and he starts talking about a certain technique and I sit there, I don't want yes men. Mm-hmm. I want guys that say, okay, this is how I think this should be done. And then you make a decision. Did you like what they did before, or do you use some different techniques or whatever?
Are there some things that you can learn from? And listen, we all know that Matt Eberflus, there was some issues there. But is there things that you could pick up that, like, well, they actually did something pretty good, and maybe we want to take that? I know, listening to Mike Zimmer, and you and Mike worked together for a long time, Mike's saying that he tried to do some things from the Dan Quinn administration, but he should have gone to his stuff quicker. Is that maybe him trying to, like, okay, I'm going to see if I can get them to play the way they played for Dan?
Right.
But in hindsight, Mike's kind of like, I shouldn't have done that. I should have just got to where I was trying to get quicker.
Yeah, I think that's the opposite of what we were just talking about. Now you're talking about an entire scheme.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, my first year as a head coach, I promoted Mike Zimmer to coordinator. Well, Mike was at that time, take my guys and get them upfield, the defensive linemen. Yeah. Get them upfield, okay? And to be honest with you, that hurt us the first year because we didn't play the run very well. We were rushing the passer, but we couldn't stop the run.
Right.
So the second year, I left a lot to him, to be honest with you, because I trusted him. He was one of my guys. I brought him into the league. And the second year, I said, look, we're not doing that anymore. This is what we're going to do. So somewhere along the line, your philosophy has to kick in. And that's kind of what happened. So I think sometimes you can, you start off trying to do some things. If they don't work, that's the key to the NFL, is being able to adjust, even halftime adjustments. The difference between college football and the pros is you got experienced coaches. And, in college, you can stop their best 5 plays,
sure,
and you probably win the game.
Right.
In the pros, you win at halftime, they'll come out in the second half and do something completely
totally
different. You have to be ready to adjust, and that's part of the adjustment, what you're talking about, Bryan.
Dave, when you guys were winning Super Bowls, you had Charles Haley. You guys were almost like a 3-4 front, the way that Haley played, coming from San Francisco, he played what they call the elephant position,
right,
which was like, talk about that. So and how you used Haley, who could be a 4-3 end, a 3-4 outside linebacker. How does the adjustment for that, maybe Dallas and what they're looking at personnel going forward? What kind of ends maybe would they be looking at? Not name guys, but what the traits for those guys?
Well, it was a bit different back then. Today, for example, a guy like Parsons.
Right.
You move them all over the place.
Right.
Okay? That's not me. I was more get lined up, make sure you know what you're doing, and play. Right. And then use your athletic ability. And when I took the coordinator's job, Butch Davis had just left. It was my first coordinator job in the league, so I made the decision, I'm going to do everything exactly the way he did it. Mm-hmm. We did it. And then I'd adjust based on how the season went. Okay, and so I didn't flip the defensive ends because he wasn't a true elephant end because we didn't flip them right and left. At San Francisco, he flipped. He was always on the weak side of the defense no matter what.
Away from the tight end then, right?
So if the tight end moved to his side, they would flip the defense back the other way, and he would run over there and go on the other side. Well, Butch never wanted to do that because he didn't want to teach a guy to use a right hand down one time, left hand down the next. Well, of course, Haley didn't like that necessarily, but as the season went on, you have to make a decision based on what you feel comfortable with. And, we finally had to start using a little bit more combinations with him on the tight end. So when he would end up on the tight end, because he was a left defensive end, we would have to now start running games with him to make sure he wasn't always lined up on the tight end.
Coach, let me ask you this. When you're building a roster, right, you're talking to administration, you're talking to Jerry and the guys, scouts, we're going in the draft and stuff. Philosophically, do you build around a position that's best for your defense, or do you just build around the best guy? For example, in your defense, you may say, oh, the 3 tech is most important. We're going to build around this guy here. Or do you go, well, we got Micah Parsons on this team. We're going to build around that guy, but he's not a 3 tech. Which one of those do you lean more?
Well, I lean more to making sure that your interior guys are pretty solid.
Sure.
You know, that to me was where you start on defense, because if you can't stop the run, forget about it. If a team is offensively balanced, you have a real problem. So, you know, and that puts you off balance. So my biggest thing was you start with the scheme first. And then when you've got a special guy now, when you watch teams around the league that have a guy like Parsons or whatever, if I was coaching now, I'd figure out a way to get Parsons in the right spot.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, but back in the day, so for us, I would look at it like you start off, here's your base scheme, make sure you can stop the run, and then now on third down, you then move guys around and do what you have to do to get guys. If I had Haley today, I'd been a better coach with Haley, to be perfectly honest with you, because I would have been a little bit more flexible as far as what he could do. But our biggest thing, to be honest with you, if I think from starting when we came into the league, was we were pretty simple.
Sure.
Okay, we wanted to get the best guys in the best position and let them play football, and that's kind of how we did it in the past.
Well, the reason I asked, because the new coaches coming in, it's defensive back heavy. There's a bunch of DB coaches up in there. Yeah. But your best player on defense right now is Quentin Damn Williams.
Right.
In the middle, like you mentioned, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm just wondering, like, if you're Christian Parker, the new coach for the Cowboys, like,
right.
All right, do we build around our DBs because that's what I'm great at? Or do we just lean on Quentin, Kenny Clark, and Oso Digizua, where the Cowboys defense is most built right now?
Get a guy that can rush the passer and get a corner that can cover.
Yeah.
That's the key. I mean, I don't think you can go heavy in one direction or another. I think the biggest thing is that you got to be strong enough physically to handle things up front.
Sure.
That's the start of the whole thing to me in this league. And the good teams, if you watch them offensively, you know, one game they may have a 100-yard rusher. The next game they might have 50-yard rusher. But the difference is in the 50-yard rusher game, they still ran the ball the same amount of times because they want to be balanced. And so for me, I think you have to have some guys that can cover, because in order to stop the run today, you've got to be able to commit one of those safeties to the run.
Right.
And you know, so from that standpoint, you were talking about a big nickel the other day.
Yeah.
You got to be able to commit one of those safeties to the run. So you have to have some guys outside that can cover. So to me, it's a team thing, and that goes back to the Haley question. I was more concerned with the team than I was Haley, to be perfectly honest with you, because Haley had to adjust to what he did. But when they were double teaming him, somebody else has to be able to make a play, and that was the way I approached it.
Dave, Voch mentioned about these defensive back heavy, and you know later on we'll have you back and talk about some of these defensive backs. But these teams have gone to these safeties that can play in the slot and play. 30 years ago, you found that guy.
Yes.
You went to Arizona State. You were the champion of Darren Woodson. And I think today, the way that you guys use Woody, I think Woody would have been great in today's football. Talk about going to see Woody at Arizona State, coming back, telling Jimmy, and then ultimately getting him drafted, and then how you guys used him in that way.
Well, first of all, back in the day, you know, we were in obviously the NFC East, and that was a power league, and we were coming in with speed. But you still have to have somebody at that safety position that can support the run.
Right.
So Jimmy, as we were starting to do our scouting, and back then, he sent the coaches out.
Right.
You know, I don't know how much they do that anymore because they don't do individual workouts as much anymore.
Right.
But they've got their team workouts or whatever. But he said, we need to find a bigger, strong safety. and there's no question about it. So I was out at Arizona State, and I was actually looking at Felipe Sparks, who was a corner at the time, who ended up playing in the league, actually played for us for a little while. Yeah. You know, he was the guy at Arizona State. And I'm sitting we used to watch film. They'd have film set up before the workout in the afternoon. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching the film in the morning. And this kid, Darren Woodson, was a weak side outside linebacker. And he's going sideline to sideline, right? Now, he wasn't making a lot of tackles because they had a great team.
Yeah.
But he was always around the football, right? Well, I'm listening to the scouts talking there saying, I don't know about this Woodson guy. You know, he never takes on a block. We don't know what he can do as a linebacker or this, that, and the other thing. So I said, okay. So we go out and we get in a 40-yard dash. The guy's 218 pounds. I'm standing at the finish line. Here comes this guy, and he looks like a runaway freight train, a passenger train, not a freight train. And he comes flying out there and runs a 4.38 40-yard dash. So I said, we need to work this guy out as a DB. So we worked him out. He had all the skills. So when I came back, I said to Jimmy, hey, look, this guy, I don't know if he's going to be a big interceptor because I don't know what his instincts are.
Right.
But I can tell you right now, when he gets here, he'll start at nickel for us because he runs fast and he's big, can support the run, and he'll be on every special team. Well, you know, the first year, that's what he did.
That's exactly what he did, yeah.
Yeah, so now, you know, I come back to Jimmy. I said, listen, I know it's a little bit of a gamble. I'm thinking, you know, 4th, 5th round, whatever. He takes him to the top of the 2nd round. So the pressure was on me now. So anyway, he ended up playing safety on 1st and 2nd down. And remember, we brought quarter coverage into the league. Nobody was running it. And that safety had to be a cover guy. Okay, not just a supporter. And so he started at safety on 1st and 2nd down and did support the run. And on 3rd down, he went in and played nickel. And that's where he got his deal. And I've told him many times, Brian, you'll get a kick out of this. He should be in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
But I tell him all the time, and he and I talk all the time. And I said to him, I said, you know, Darren, we probably kept you out of the Hall of Fame. And he goes, why? And I said, because from an interception standpoint, you probably would have had more interceptions if you'd have just stayed at safety. Right. Because when he went up to nickel, obviously he's covering guys more, but he's not, you know, instinctively going to the football. He led the team in tackles, but the interception part of it probably has kept him out of the Hall of Fame. And he says to me all the time, he says, Camps, I'm on the Ring of Honor, and we won 3 Super Bowls. Leave me alone. We're good. We're good. So that's kind of where it started. And fortunately, he should be in the Hall of Fame, not only from his ability to play football, but from his character. Yeah. You know, he came from the toughest part of Phoenix, Arizona. Most of his friends are either dead or in jail. And you'd want him for your son tomorrow. That's what a great character he is.
So when you have a player like that, right? I just want to dig deeper into this. Like, what does a game plan look like for you? Like, when you go into a team, we're prepping, we're game planning, and I got a player that can play safety and nickel and linebacker. Like, what are some advantages that you can have that another team maybe they won't have because they don't have a player like that?
Well, versatility, obviously. You know, that allows you to do more things with the guy, you know, and he was a great blitzer. Well, he could blitz from the secondary, but he could also blitz from nickel, you know, so you know, we had the advantage of him being really just what you said, a 3-way player for us. He could drop into the box, play the run. He could play nickel, and that's on 1st down. Right. You know, you could drop him in to get an 8-man front, or you played him in a 7-man front, obviously in the nickel position. He's a big nickel. And that's what they're doing today with the guy, Hamilton, the guy from
the Ravens.
The Ravens. Yeah. You know, I mean, he plays all those different positions. Anytime you have versatility, an example, Liam Cohen, the head coach of the Jaguars, and I do some stuff with the Jaguars still now, having been in Jacksonville. When he came in, he said, the first thing we're looking for is versatility at every position. They had a guy by the name of Cole Van Lannon that started at tackle for them, Voch. He was a backup tackle. He started at right guard for 2 games. He started at left guard for 3 games. These are from injury. And then he started 7 games at left tackle. And that's what they looked for in their offensive linemen. They wanted, obviously guys that love football and physical, but versatility. And that's what a guy like Woodson gave us.
When you, we got the combine coming up next week. And I've worked with you before as when you were the head coach and stuff. And I know it's different from being the defensive coordinator as a head coach. But when you go to the combine, what did you always feel like was the most important thing for you to get out of the combine?
Well, the very first important thing was you get eyeballs on the guy.
Right.
To me, the interview was just as probably more important to me because I wanted to get a feel for how that guy was. Because in coaching, they've got to buy into you. Right. Somehow they've got to buy into you. So you have to get a feeling of whether or not this guy is that type of a person. So the interview part of it, I always asked them a ton of questions about how they reacted with their coach. I would mention their coach. What did he do?
You knew by name the coach.
Yeah.
You knew a lot of those coaches.
Yeah. And how did you react with him? What were the things that motivated you? Those kind of things. Then from an athletic standpoint, that's what you get out of the combine. You get a chance to see up front. For example, I always sat at the 10-yard line in the 40s because I wanted to see a defensive back, his explosion. How does he come out? Mm-hmm. Now, you're going to get the result of the 40, so what his time was. Right. And there is a direct correlation. There is a correlation between a guy that adjusted for his weight, what he runs in the 40-yard dash, correlates with his career in the NFL. If you look back, about 70% of the guys that run better than the average at their 40-yard dash end up more than 3 years in the NFL. And if the guys that don't do that still have a chance, but it's like 50%.
Right.
So to me, the 10-yard dash, and then you can see the things that explosion was the thing I was looking for. The 20-yard
shuttle. Yeah.
How quick they go 5 yards one direction, run back 10 yards, and they come back at 5 yards.
Right.
That always correlated to me. How quick they accelerate out of change of direction. And then some of the drills, they break and drive, some of those things you get out of it. But another one that I loved, they didn't use we used a lot of our own individual drills when we went out. And one of them was you pedal for 10 yards, and you'd have a guy there say go when he hit the 10-yard mark, and then they would have to flip and finish the 40.
Yeah, that's a drill they do now. They give the Raiders credit for that. They kind of call that the Al Davis drill.
Well, that wasn't the Al Davis drill. That was a Houston, Texas drill. Nick Saban, that's where I got it. I stole it from him.
Yeah.
But and that showed me the explosiveness out of the turn, the hips and explosion.
Yeah. Was there ever a time you were sitting up there and you're watching the drills and you're kind of cursing at the defensive back coaches for the drills they're putting them through? That you would what is this? Listen, you wanted to put down your notepad and go walk down there and start running them through drills?
Yeah, no question about it. And really, to be honest with you, I never got to be on the field because I would have liked to have been on the field.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing them up, close.
As much as you like personalities and stuff, like coaching Dion and Charles Haley, you like the personality. Right. So being on the field would be perfect for you.
That way you're getting involved. You don't have every player in your individual meetings.
Right.
But when they're down on the field with the whole group is down there, you see how they react when they don't think they did as good a job as they think they were supposed to, and those kind of things. So, to be honest with you, the combine, I would grade them. I'd give them a 5-point thing, and I would, for every drill, I would put a number on them.
Right.
Then I'd add them up at the end, and then we'd turn it into the scouts, and it would be from 1 to 40, whatever it was. But in reality, it came down to watching them on film. But those particular drills made a difference, as far as the athletic ability.
So you mentioned earlier that the one thing you look for when you're talking to a player is that they have to love ball. Like, they have to love football. When you're talking to a player, of course, they're going to go to the combine and they've gone through their little note cards and their agents have prepped them up. They got the best lies at this point in their life right now.
Right.
How do you tell if a player really loves football? Because sometimes you don't know if a player loves ball or not until they're in the league and maybe they don't work as hard at it, right? But in the I'm talking to you process, I'm face-to-face, we're at the combine, how do you know? What are some tells?
Well, first of all, you know a little bit about the guy before he even comes in there because the scouts have already, and some of the scouts, I always work towards the scouts because, as an assistant coach, and we're really talking about DB coach, I watched a kid on film maybe 3 games.
Right.
Whereas a scout has watched that guy since he was a freshman.
Right.
They're in that school. You know that, obviously.
Right.
They're in that school. And if a kid's got a chance, he shows up as a freshman or a sophomore or whatever it is, redshirt freshman, you know a little something about him, okay? So to me, we had, the first thing I would ask the scouts is, okay, so what's his work ethic? How is he approach the game? Is he a guy that it's there early? Is he a guy there late? Is he on the field? When other guys aren't on the field, you can't really tell. Just like you said, they're prepped for the combine. But for me, it's just how I related with him. And you can see some guys that look you in the eye. You can see guys that are looking down instead of looking at you. You can't tell 100%, but I always felt like I could get a feel when the guy was sitting across from me.
Dave, the one thing you always get on me and say, don't feel bad about this, but I felt like that we didn't help you when you were head coach when I was there, so I'll say it again. But I also felt like you did a really nice job of backing the scouts. And I want to know, because working for Jerry Jones is not easy in that way because there are a lot of opinions that get thrown out there. And one of the things that I always felt like, I'm like, listen, I don't call third down defenses. Right. But I could find you a guy that could stop somebody on third down. Right. I do appreciate the fact that you stuck up for the scouts and said, no, wait a minute. If the coaches get a little too involved in this, where does that belief come from? Because you came from a system where Jimmy, and you had some good scouts back in the days when you guys first got to Dallas, but Jimmy really relied on the coaches quite a bit. How did you adapt what you believed?
Well, first of all, it's trust. I mean, you either trust a guy or you don't. The biggest thing was that when we first got there, the first year, we were the scouts.
Yeah.
We went, I don't know how many, we actually took a plane with 5 of us and went to Notre Dame one time and looked at all their players. It's because Jimmy didn't know the scouts.
Okay.
That when we first started, we were out all the time. And that was back in the day where the Cowboys always could get individual workouts.
Right.
Just because it was the Cowboys. If I called a kid, and we actually called them. I mean, we'd call a kid and say, hey, look, I'm coming in. Can I get you at 2:00? Well, they ended up stopping that because there were some kids that were not going to school. They were working out for different guys. And the 4th or 5th workout, the guy was all shot.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is I came in, I trusted the scouts we had. And that to me is important. And, to be honest with you, when I look at the Cowboys today, everybody's on the Cowboys because they haven't been to the Super Bowl in 30 years and all that. But listen, they went 3 years in a row, 12-4.
Yeah.
Well, you know how difficult that is?
Oh, no, yeah.
Okay.
We would have killed to do that when you and I were together.
Oh, please. And so they didn't finish.
Right.
But when you look at their system, Will McClay, in my opinion, has done a great job.
Yeah.
Because you don't go 12-4 unless you got pretty good people.
Right.
And so, to me, I think the scouts are really important. And I think you get a feel for certain guys that are better at certain things.
Certain positions, right.
Yeah. I would listen to a guy that I knew was a really good defensive back type guy. Yeah. And then I wouldn't listen to him necessarily if I was talking
offensive
about
tackles.
an offensive guard.
Right.
So I think you have to figure those kind of things out. And there's a lot. Look, in order to win, Brian, and you always say you didn't get me this or that, all I can tell you is it's a team game. And really, the quarterback situation was not great.
We struggled.
That's the biggest thing.
That hurt us a lot.
Because in order to win, in order to go all the way, you have to have a combination, in my opinion. You have to have a defense that's good. They don't have to be great, but they have to be really good. And then you have to have the quarterback. You put those two things together, you've got a chance. And when you look at the Cowboys over the last 30 years, they've actually had some pretty good defenses. Parcells, the year after I left, they were number one in defense with Zimmer still there, right?
Right.
Well, they've had some pretty good defenses, right? But they didn't have the quarterback.
Sure.
Then they get the quarterback, and now all of a sudden they don't have a defense. Once they put those two things together, because they have some good players on that roster right now, and I'm looking forward to them getting better.
You would say that Dak is a quarterback that could win a Super Bowl if he had a good defense?
Absolutely. I love Dak Prescott. Let me tell you something about Dak Prescott. I know maybe this is getting too long. I don't know. But
no, you're good.
Maybe I'm talking too much.
You're doing great.
Dak Prescott, when he came in, okay, they were out in California. I was doing some TV stuff with the Cowboys.
Right.
I'd come back.
Right.
It was. I think it was his
2016.
first or second year.
16,
right. And so they came back from Oxnard, and which I was not at, but I went to the first practice coming back, and he came walking out of the locker room, and I was standing there, and oh gosh, I'm losing my mind. The running back, great running back, Zeke Elliott. Zeke Elliott walked out. He walked by me. He had no idea who I was. Dak Prescott walks out. As soon as he sees me, he came over. He said, "Coach, hey, Coach Campo, great to see you," whatever. From that day on, I said, you know what? This guy understands history.
Sure.
He understands.
Yeah.
He's a cowboy, right?
Yeah.
And then you watch what he's done. Guys, statistically, he and Mahomes, he has better statistics, I think, than Mahomes does. Well, so you have to have those other things I'm talking about. He's good enough if he's got the right people that he can win, and offensively they have the right people if they keep the guys they've got right now.
Sure. Coach, I got one more for you. And Bryan tells this story all the time. And I just think it was fascinating. Bryan, if you want to lead us up, and I just want you to react to the story because you were there. But the Jerry Jones pulls out his phone when nobody was supposed to be pulling out the phone. Bryan, would you tell the story? And Coach, I just want your reaction to it, please.
We were sitting in Wichita Falls. This was Dave's first year. We were sitting down having our meeting, and Dave was going through the rules with the staff. And you did a fine job getting through the rules. And we got to the part where it says, if your cell phone goes off, it's a $200 fine. And as soon as he says, as your cell phone goes off, $200, Jerry Jones' cell phone rang. And Dave, to your credit, you stopped. Jerry kind of looked at you, pulled the cell phone out, opened it, said hello, reached into his back pocket, pulled two crisp $100 bills out, and slid them over in front of you. And I want to say you handled that perfectly. The room, absolutely. We erupted in laughter, but it was just the oddest time. You're making good points. You know, we're all like, yeah, we're buying in camps, we're buying
phones,
in. And all of a sudden the owner's phone goes off. You just looked at Jerry. He slid those two $100 bills across. I think you put the damn $200 in your pocket.
Did. I put it in my pocket. I put it in my pocket. I said, thanks a lot, Jerry, but that's not helping us. Listen, Jerry Jones is a character. I mean, there's no question about it. And to be honest with you, he's a loyal guy. You know, you can say whatever you want. He's a businessman, and he makes decisions based on business. But I love the guy. He fired me twice, you know. He got me as a head coach, and then I came back as an assistant, and then he didn't renew my contract after. I think there was other things involved there. But quick story about Jerry.
Are there quick stories about Jerry?
Well, there's all kinds of stories. Listen, I could write a book, but I'd never be able to talk to him again, for sure. But the home playoff games are the media is run by the local people.
Yeah.
The NFL runs the regular season, but Bill Jones and Laufenberg do the TV, local guys,
CBS,
right, for the pregame. And they always have a guest, okay? It might be Michael Irvin, might be Emmett, whatever. Well, I was the guest. The first game, the game that Tony Romo got hurt, and Dak Prescott actually came in Seattle.
Yeah.
I was the guest in Seattle. Mm-hmm. So we go through the first half, and the halftime guest is Jerry. So there's 3 seats there. So I get up when Jerry comes up. Jerry sits down, goes through the interview. So now he stands up. The interview's over. They're still live out there. And Jerry turns around and he goes, Campo, and he grabs me and he pulls me up to the mic. And he goes, let me tell you guys something. This was one of the best football coaches I've ever been around, but I never got him a quarterback. Yeah. So you talk about loyalty, and that's one of the reasons he actually brought me back for that second stint. You can say Wade did it. Well, Wade had to buy off on it. But Jerry was the reason he brought him, because he's loyal to his people.
Shouts out to Jerry.
It's funny you say that. I know a lot of people. I'm like you. I owe Jerry Jones my career basically in media because of what he has done. But you have to be critical, and Jerry understands that. But I wanted to ask you a story about with Jerry. And was there ever a time where you felt like, Jerry, we can't do this? We can't do this. And I felt like the Joey Galloway trade was that moment for me when we were all together. I just said, we can make this trade, but we can't give up 2 ones to do it. And I just don't. Is there ever a moment where you felt like you fought and you felt like you were going to get fired? Because I've had those moments with Jerry.
I've got one. I have to be careful with how I say it, but I can...
Do you work around it?
Yeah, I'm just hopeful Jerry isn't listening. Well, that was one, obviously. That was a tough decision.
That was a tough decision.
And of course, Joey got hurt right away.
The first game.
That really hurt us.
Yeah.
But the one that sticks out more than anything to me is that, and I don't blame them for this. Let me just put that out front right now.
Yeah.
But my 3rd year, I knew I had to win.
Yeah.
I knew I had to win to keep my job.
Yeah.
And in training camp, we had Tony Banks, who was a quarterback.
Right.
Quincy Carter was the backup, and I think we had we had Hutchison at that time.
Chad Hutchison.
Chad Hutchison, right? So they were the quarterbacks, and Tony was a starting quarterback.
Yeah.
And Tony was a journeyman in the league. And Tony had been on teams that won 8 games, 9 games. So I felt, listen, this guy's got a chance to help us stay there, and I'm going to have a chance to stay.
Yeah.
So we go to training camp. The first practice, he's the starter, Quincy's the backup, Hutchison's the third. After practice, Jerry calls me down to his office. I come down to the office. It's he and Steven. And Jerry says, Dave, I know you're not probably going to like this, but we feel like we need to go with Quincy Carter for the betterment going forward. And that's where I say I can't blame them in a way, because in reality, it's about going forward.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm thinking to myself, okay. And he says, and I said, Jerry, I said, let me just tell you this. He's not ready. I said, we can go that way. He's not ready. And he said, well, we kind of know that, but we think for the betterment of whatever. So I said, you know what, Jerry? I'm a company man. You know that. I've been here for 14 years. We'll do whatever. And I kind of had that mentality. I thought we could win with anybody.
Sure.
That's just the mentality you have. So I said, we'll go with that. So I get up, and I'm thinking to myself as I'm getting up and walking to the door, we're going to play preseason games, the first 2, and they're going to see that Quincy's not ready. And we'll go back to Tony, and we'll go about our business. So I get to the door, and he goes, oh, by the way, Dave, we're cutting Tony Banks today.
Hey.
So that's when I knew. I
That's
said,
when you
you know
knew.
what, this
Yeah.
is going to be a rough
Yeah.
year. We gotta find ways to get this done. And unfortunately, it didn't get done. But also, I do understand the team mentality of
Yeah.
that decision.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cowboy legend, Dave Campo. We'll have you back, and we got this big, nice board. We'll draw some film up one day. We'll, talk about some players. Bryan said he's going to talk about some players with you, and we'll come up here and do it again. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
I appreciate it.
Did I ask good questions, though? That's all.
You were wonderful. And let me just say this. I'm only a legend in my own mind.
Nah.
So I appreciate that.
You were part of 3 parades in the city for championships. I'd say you're a legendary guy.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate y'all. You be sure to hit all the buttons. We love you to pieces. CrownGlobalMedia.com is where you find everything, and we'll be back Monday with some more film, all right? Crown.